"You're mine now," said the Apache woman, after the lonely rancher saved her from the wolves. The wolves came at sunset when the sky burned red like spilled blood. Jack Carter heard the screams cutting through the desert wind as he rode toward his ranch, and every instinct told him to kick his horse faster toward that sound. 3 gray shapes circled something dark on the ground near the rocky outcrop, their snarls mixing with the woman's desperate cries. Jack pulled his rifle from the saddle without slowing down, aimed at the largest wolf, and fired. The beast dropped instantly. The other 2 turned toward him, eyes gleaming yellow in the fading light. Jack fired again, catching the second wolf in the shoulder. It yelped and limped away into the brush. The third wolf charged straight at his horse. Jack's mare reared up, nearly throwing him, but he held tight and squeezed off another shot that sent the animal tumbling into the dirt. Silence fell except for harsh breathing and the stamp of his horse's hooves. He dismounted carefully, rifle ready, and approached the figure on the ground. A woman lay there, her dark hair wild around her face, blood seeping through tears in her buckskin dress. Her eyes met his, black and fierce despite the pain. She was Apache. He could tell from her clothing and the markings on her garments. She tried to sit up but gasped and fell back. "Easy now," Jack said, kneeling beside her. "Let me see how bad it is." She watched him with those intense eyes as he examined her injuries. Deep scratches across her shoulders and arms, a nasty bite on her left leg. Nothing fatal if he could stop the bleeding and prevent infection. He pulled off his bandana and pressed it against the worst wound. "Can you ride?" he asked. She nodded once, her jaw set tight against the pain. Jack helped her to her feet, and she swayed against him for just a moment before steadying herself. Pride kept her upright when her body wanted to collapse. He could respect that. He'd felt the same way many times in his 32 years on this harsh land. Jack lifted her onto his horse and climbed up behind her. She sat rigid in front of him as they rode toward his ranch house, a small structure of wood and stone that sat alone in the valley. He'd built it himself 5 years ago after the fever took his parents. Since then, he'd lived by himself, just him and his cattle, and the endless work that kept a man too tired to feel lonely. The ranch house appeared in the gathering darkness, lamplight glowing in the single window. Jack helped the woman down and half-carried her inside, laying her on his own bed. She hissed when he began cleaning her wounds with whiskey, but she didn't cry out. Her strength impressed him. "What's your name?" he asked as he worked. "Nahale," she said, her voice low and musical despite the strain. "It means forest. I'm Jack Carter. This is my ranch." "I know who you are," she replied, studying his face. "The man who lives alone. The man who doesn't take what isn't his." Jack paused, meeting her gaze. "How do you know that?" "My people watch. We see everything that happens on this land." She reached up suddenly and gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "You saved my life, Jack Carter. Among my people, this creates a bond, a debt that must be repaid." "You don't owe me anything," Jack said, uncomfortable with the intensity in her eyes. Nahale smiled then, a strange smile that made something shift in his chest. "That is not for you to decide. You are mine now, Jack Carter, and I am yours. This is our way." Jack started to protest, but she closed her eyes, and her grip on his wrist loosened as exhaustion pulled her under. He finished bandaging her wounds in silence, his mind spinning with questions. What did she mean? What had he gotten himself into by pulling her from those wolves? Outside, the desert wind picked up, rattling the windows and howling around the corners of the house. Jack poured himself a drink and sat in his chair, watching the woman sleep in his bed. Tomorrow he would figure out what to do. Tonight, he just needed to make sure she survived until morning. But something told him that saving Nahale's life had changed everything, had set something in motion that he couldn't control or predict. The loneliness he'd worn like armor for 5 years suddenly felt less solid, and that scared him more than any pack of wolves ever could. The next morning arrived with gunshots echoing across the valley. Jack jerked awake in his chair, rifle in his hands before his eyes were fully open. Nahale sat up in bed, alert despite her injuries. Through the window, Jack saw riders approaching, 6 of them, led by a man he recognized immediately. Cole Bishop, the foreman from the Double B Ranch, the biggest spread in the territory. Bishop had wanted Jack's land for years, wanted the water rights that came with the creek running through the property. "Stay inside," Jack told Nahale, moving to the door. "No," she said, standing despite the pain it caused her. "They come for me." Jack turned to stare at her. "What?" "Bishop's men chased me yesterday. They wanted to take me to their ranch. I ran. The wolves found me before I could reach the hills." She moved to stand beside him, looking out the window. "They will not leave without me. Jack felt anger rise in his chest. Nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go. The rider stopped 50 feet from the house. Bishop dismounted, a big man with a thick beard and cold eyes. 2 of his men carried rifles across their saddles. Jack stepped out onto his porch, his own rifle held casually but ready. "Morning, Carter," Bishop called. "We're looking for an Apache woman. Tracked her to your land last night. She's inside, isn't she?" "What business is that of yours?" Jack asked. "Found her wandering near our property. She's probably a scout for raiders. We need to question her." Bishop's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Hand her over, and we'll be on our way." "She was running from wolves," Jack said. "I helped her. She's hurt and resting. When she's ready to leave, she'll leave on her own terms." Bishop's expression hardened. "That's not how this works, Carter. We can't have Apaches wandering around freely, not with all the trouble in the territory. She comes with us, or we come in and get her."
Jack raised his rifle slightly.
"I'd reconsider that plan." The 2 armed riders shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward their weapons. The tension stretched tight as a rope about to snap. Jack could feel his heart pounding, but his hands stayed steady. He'd faced down men before, though never 6 at once. The odds weren't good, but he wasn't backing down. Something about Nahale, about the fierce pride in her eyes and the words she'd spoken last night, made him want to stand between her and anyone who meant her harm. "You're making a mistake," Bishop said, his voice dropping low and dangerous. "The Double B has friends in this territory, powerful friends. You're just one man on a small ranch. Don't throw your life away for some Apache woman you don't even know."
"I know she needed help and I gave it," Jack replied.
"That's all I need to know. Now get off my land." Behind him, Jack heard the door open. Nahale stepped out, moving with careful grace despite her bandages. She carried Jack's spare rifle, and she held it like someone who knew how to use it. "I am not some helpless woman who needs men to decide my fate," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. "I am Nahale, daughter of the wind, granddaughter of warriors. If you want to take me, Bishop, then come and try. But know that I will paint this ground with your blood before I go with you." Bishop laughed, but it sounded forced. Brave words from a wounded woman. "Test them and see," Nahale replied. The standoff lasted another long moment. Jack could see Bishop calculating, weighing whether this was worth the fight. Finally, the big man spat into the dirt and swung back onto his horse. "This isn't over, Carter," he said. "You just made yourself an enemy you can't afford to have. Seems to me I already had one," Jack said. "You've been trying to steal my water rights for 2 years. This doesn't change anything." Bishop wheeled his horse around, and his men followed. They rode off toward the east, but Jack noticed one rider break away from the group and circle toward the hills. A scout, watching to see what happened next. Jack made note of it, but said nothing. When the riders disappeared from view, Nahale lowered the rifle and leaned against the porch post, her face pale. Jack caught her before she could fall. "You shouldn't be up," he said, helping her back inside. "I will not hide while men decide my future," she said, but she didn't resist as he guided her to the bed. "Fair enough," Jack said, "but you can't fight if you bleed out from torn stitches. Rest now. We'll figure out what comes next when you're stronger."
Nahale caught his hand as he turned to leave.
"Why do you help me? You gain nothing but trouble."
Jack considered the question. "My father used to say that a man's character shows clearest when he has a choice between what's easy and what's right. Letting Bishop take you would have been easy. Didn't feel right, though." "Your father was wise," Nahale said. "He raised a good son." Jack felt his face warm. He wasn't used to compliments. "Get some rest. I need to check the fence line and make sure Bishop's men actually left." He spent the morning riding his property, finding the tracks where Bishop's scout had circled around to watch the house from the hills. The man was still there, a distant figure on horseback. Jack ignored him and went about his work, but his mind kept returning to Nahale and her strange words from the night before. "You are mine now, and I am yours." What did that mean in Apache culture? Was it just gratitude or something more binding? When he returned to the house at midday, he found Nahale sitting at his table, sorting through his meager supplies. She'd found his coffee and made a pot, and the smell filled the small room. "You should be resting," Jack said. "I have rested. Now I work." She poured him coffee without asking if he wanted it. "You have very little food. How do you survive?" "I manage," Jack said, slightly defensive. "I'm not much of a cook." "I can see that." She handed him the cup. "I will cook for you tonight. It is the least I can do." "You don't have to do anything," Jack said. "You're hurt, and you saved me. I told you, this creates a bond.
I will honor it. She met his eyes across the table. Tell me about yourself, Jack Carter.
Why does a strong man live alone in this empty place? Jack sat down, uncomfortable with the direct question. Not much to tell. My parents died 5 years back. Fever swept through in winter. I kept the ranch going because it's all I know. No wife, no children. Never found the right woman, I guess. This is hard country. Most women want easier lives in town. Naheli studied him with those dark, penetrating eyes. You are lonely. It wasn't a question, and Jack couldn't deny it. Sometimes, but lonely is better than settling for wrong. Perhaps, Nahel said, but you did not settle. You chose to stand alone rather than compromise your honor. This tells me much about you. Jack shifted uncomfortably. What about you? Why were Bishop's men chasing you? Nahel's expression darkened. My people have a camp in the hills, 40 miles north. I came south to gather herbs that grow only in this valley. Bishop's men saw me and decided an Apache woman alone was easy prey. They wanted to take me to their ranch to use me as they pleased. I ran, but they chased me for hours. When the wolves found me, I thought that might be a kinder death than what Bishop intended. Rage flared in Jack's chest. If they come back, they'll get more than warnings. They will come back, Nahele said calmly. Men like Bishop do not forget challenges to their power. He will return with more men, or he will find another way to hurt you. You have made yourself my protector, and that makes you his enemy. I was already his enemy, Jack said. This just makes it official. Nahele smiled, and it transformed her face from fierce to beautiful. You are either very brave or very foolish, Jack Carter. Maybe both, Jack admitted. They spent the afternoon in an oddly comfortable silence. Nahale moved around his kitchen with the confidence of someone who knew her way around a home, despite her injuries. She made a stew from his dried beef and vegetables, adding herbs from a pouch she wore at her waist. The smell made Jack's stomach growl. He couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for him. As the sun set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, they ate together at his small table. The food tasted better than anything Jack had made in years. Nahali watched him eat with satisfaction in her eyes. Tomorrow I should return to my people, she said quietly. They will worry. Jack felt an unexpected disappointment. You're not healed enough to travel 40 miles. I am strong enough, and staying here puts you in danger. I can handle danger, Jack said. Besides, Bishop's scout is still watching. If you leave now, they'll follow you. Might be better to wait until you're fully healed. Nahela considered this. You make a valid point, but I cannot stay here indefinitely. People will talk. Let them talk, Jack said. I don't care what people think. Perhaps you should, Nahale said softly. A white man harboring an Apache woman will draw attention you do not want. The army patrols this territory. If they hear rumors, they may come to investigate. Jack hadn't thought of that. The army had been cracking down on any perceived cooperation between whites and Apaches, seeing it as a threat to their control of the territory. If soldiers came asking questions, things could get complicated fast. Then we'll be careful, he said. But you're not leaving until you're ready. That's final. Nahele's smile returned. You give orders as if you have authority over me. I'm just being practical, Jack said, but he felt his face warm again under her amused gaze. You are being protective, Nahale corrected. This is different. And it proves what I said before. You are mine now, Jack Carter. The bond has formed whether you accept it or not. Jack wanted to argue, but something in her certainty made the words die in his throat. Maybe she was right. Maybe pulling her from those wolves had created something neither of them could undo. And maybe, he realized with surprise, he didn't want to undo it. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for 5 years felt lighter with Nahale in his house, sharing his table, looking at him with those fierce, knowing eyes. Outside, the desert wind picked up again, carrying the howl of distant coyotes. Jack stood and checked the locks on his door and windows, something he rarely bothered with. Nahale watched him from the table, understanding in her expression. They will not attack tonight, she said. Bishop will plan. Do you want to visit the divine in the path? I would be so happy. He will gather more men and come when he thinks you are vulnerable. How long do we have? Maybe a week? Nahale stood and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening landscape. I should not have brought this trouble to your door. You didn't bring it, Jack said, joining her at the window. It was already here. Bishop's been looking for an excuse to move against me. You just gave him one a little sooner than he would have found on his own. Still, I regret the danger to you. Jack looked down at her, at the proud line of her jaw and the strength in her bearing despite her injuries. I don't regret helping you. I'd do it again. Nahali turned to face him fully, and in the lamplight her eyes seemed to hold ancient wisdom. You are a rare man, Jack Carter. Most whites see my people as animals to be hunted or obstacles to be removed. You see me as a person worth saving. That's because you are, Jack said simply. They stood close in the small room, the air between them charged with something Jack couldn't name. Nahali reached up and placed her hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady. Yes, she said quietly. You are mine, and I am yours. The bond is sealed. This time Jack didn't argue. He just nodded, accepting something he didn't fully understand but could feel in his bones was true. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The lonely rancher and the Apache woman, bound by wolves and blood and something deeper than either could explain. The third day dawned with smoke on the horizon. Jack saw it from his porch as he drank his morning coffee, a dark column rising from the direction of the Double B Ranch. Nahali joined him, her movements easier now as her wounds began to heal.
That is not a cooking fire, she observed. No, Jack agreed.
That's a barn or a house, something big. Within an hour, a rider appeared, galloping hard toward Jack's ranch. As the figure got closer, Jack recognized young Pete Harrison, one of the few neighboring ranchers who'd always been decent to him. Pete pulled his horse to a sliding stop in front of the porch, his face streaked with soot and sweat. Jack, you got to come quick, Pete gasped. Bishop's ranch is burning. He's saying Apaches attacked in the night, killed 2 of his men, and set fire to his main barn. He's gathering every able man in the territory to ride north and retaliate against the Apache camps. Jack felt his blood run cold. He looked at Nahali, saw the horror in her eyes. That's not possible. The Apaches wouldn't attack without reason. Doesn't matter what's possible, Pete said. Bishop's already got 15 men ready to ride. The army's sending a patrol to join them. They're planning to hit the camps at dawn tomorrow. Pete's eyes flickered to Nahali. Is it true what they're saying? That you're hiding an Apache woman here? I'm not hiding anyone, Jack said. She was hurt, and I helped her. That's all. Pete looked uncomfortable. Jack, Bishop's telling everyone you're in league with the raiders. He's saying you probably helped plan the attack. You need to come to town and defend yourself or this is going to get ugly. I'm not leaving, Jack said, but his mind was racing. If Bishop had staged this attack to justify a raid on the Apache camps, Nahali's people were in terrible danger. Women, children, elders, all would be killed indiscriminately. And there was nothing one man could do to stop 15 armed riders backed by army soldiers. Nahali grabbed his arm. I must warn them. I must ride now.
You can't, Jack said. They're watching.
The second you leave, they'll follow you straight to your people. Then they die because I am too cowardly to risk myself, Nahali said, her voice breaking for the first time since he'd met her. There has to be another way, Jack said, thinking desperately. Pete shifted in his saddle. Jack, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I don't believe Bishop's story. Those tracks around his barn, they weren't made by Apache ponies. They were made by shod horses, ranch horses. And the arrows they found, they were too new, too clean, like someone bought them in town and planted them to make it look like a raid. Jack's suspicions crystallized into certainty. Bishop staged the whole thing to justify attacking the Apache camps. But why? Gold, Pete said quietly. There's been rumors of gold in the hills where the Apaches live. Bishop's been trying to get the army to relocate them for months. This gives him the excuse he needs. Once the camps are destroyed, he can claim the land legally. Nahali made a sound of pure rage. My people have no gold. This is a lie built on lies. Doesn't matter if it's true, Pete said. Bishop's convinced the other ranchers and the army captain. They ride at noon today to be in position for a dawn attack tomorrow. Jack made his decision. Pete, I need you to do something for me. Go into town and find Judge Morrison. Tell him I have evidence that Bishop staged this raid. Tell him to delay the attack until he can investigate. Morrison won't stop the army, Pete protested. He might slow them down. Buy us some time. Jack turned to Nahali. Can you reach your camp by a route they won't know? A hard route that shod horses can't follow? Nahali's eyes lit with understanding. Yes.
Through the canyon.
It cuts hours off the journey, but the path is treacherous. Only Apache ponies can navigate it.
Then you go that way.
Warn your people. Tell them to scatter into the deep hills until this blows over. Jack grabbed his rifle and ammunition. I'm going to confront Bishop directly.
If I can prove he's lying, maybe I can turn enough men against him to stop this. That is suicide, Nahele said flatly. He will kill you.
Maybe, Jack admitted. But I have to try. Your people's lives are worth the risk. Nahel stared at him for a long moment, then stepped forward and kissed him fiercely, unexpectedly. When she pulled back, her eyes blazed with emotion. You are the bravest fool I have ever known, Jack Carter. If you die, I will sing your name to the spirits until they bring you back to me. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Jack said, trying to ignore the way his heart was pounding from that kiss. Pete cleared his throat awkwardly. I'll ride to Morrison now. But Jack, be careful. Bishop's not playing games anymore. He's committed to this course. If you get in his way, he will put you down. I know, Jack said, but some things are worth dying for. After Pete rode off, Jack helped Nahale prepare for her journey. She moved through his house gathering supplies, her movements quick and efficient despite the pain Jack knew she must still be feeling. He saddled his fastest horse for her, a gray mare with Apache blood that could run all day without tiring. Take the canyon route, he told her as she mounted. Don't stop until you reach your people. And Nahel, if something happens to me, don't come back. Stay safe with your family.
I will warn my people, Nahele said, but I will return for you, Jack Carter.
This I swear on my ancestors' bones. You are mine, and I do not abandon what is mine. She kicked the horse into a gallop, heading north toward the distant hills. Jack watched until she disappeared from view, then turned his attention to the more immediate problem. Bishop's ranch lay 10 miles east. If Jack rode hard, he could be there in less than an hour. He loaded his rifle, checked his pistol, and mounted his own horse. The sun climbed higher as he rode, baking the desert floor until heat shimmered in waves across the sand. Jack's mind churned through possible scenarios, none of them good. Confronting Bishop on his own land, surrounded by his men, was borderline insane. But if Jack could get Bishop to admit the raid was staged, even just in front of his own men, it might plant enough doubt to slow the retaliation. The Doubleby Ranch sprawled across a valley rich with grass and water, the kind of land that made men willing to kill to possess it. Jack saw the burned barn first, its skeleton still smoking in the morning heat. Men moved around it with buckets, making sure the fire didn't spread. As Jack rode closer, he counted at least 20 armed men in the yard. This was worse than Pete had indicated. Bishop emerged from the main house as Jack approached, his face twisted into a cruel smile. Well, well. Carter rode right into the lion's den. That takes either guts or stupidity. Jack dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. I'm here to talk, not fight. Talk! Bishop laughed. What's there to talk about? Your Apache friends murdered 2 of my men last night and destroyed my property. Now we're going to make them pay. Those weren't Apaches, Jack said loudly, making sure all the gathered men could hear. Those were your own men, staging a false attack to justify stealing Apache land. The yard fell silent. Bishop's smile vanished. That's a serious accusation, Carter. You got any proof? The tracks around your barn were made by shod horses, not Apache ponies, Jack said. The arrows were 2 new, probably bought in town, and the timing is awfully convenient, coming right after you failed to take the Apache woman from my ranch. You calling me a liar? Bishop's hand moved toward his gun. I'm calling you what you are, Jack said. A greedy man willing to murder innocents for gold that probably doesn't even exist. Bishop drew his pistol, but Jack was ready. He dropped and rolled, drawing his own gun as he moved. The shot went over his head, close enough to feel the heat. Jack came up firing, not at Bishop, but at the water trough beside him, sending a geyser of water into the air. The distraction gave him enough time to reach cover behind a wagon. Kill him! Bishop roared, but several of his men hesitated. Jack's accusations had hit home. These were ranch hands, not killers. Some of them had families, morals, lines they wouldn't cross. Jack saw the doubt in their faces and pressed his advantage. Think about what you're doing, he shouted. You're about to massacre women and children based on a lie. Is that who you want to be? Don't listen to him, Bishop snarled. He's been helping the Apaches. He's a traitor to his own kind. I helped one injured woman, Jack called back. That's all. But Bishop wants you to believe I'm part of some conspiracy so you won't question his story. Ask yourselves why he's so eager to attack the Apache camps. What does he gain? The land, someone muttered. One of the older hands, a man named Frank who'd worked the Doubleby for 20 years. You've been talking about that land for months, boss. saying how you wish the Apaches would just disappear. "Shut your mouth, Frank," Bishop warned, but the damage was done. Other men were looking at each other, uncertainty spreading like wildfire. Jack seized the moment. "Look at the arrows. Really look at them." Apache arrows have distinctive markings. Each warrior makes his own. These are all identical. That's not how Apaches work. A younger hand walked over to where the arrows had been collected. He picked one up, examining it closely. "He's right, boss. These all look factory-made." Bishop's face turned purple with rage. "I don't care what they look like. Apaches attacked my ranch, and we're going to make them pay. Anyone who's not with me is against me." "Then I guess I'm against you," Frank said, setting down his rifle. "I didn't sign up to murder children over fake attacks." 3 more men followed Frank's lead, stepping away from their weapons. The group was fragmenting, and Bishop could see his plan falling apart. His eyes locked on Jack with pure hatred. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You should have minded your own business." "Helping people is my business," Jack replied, standing up from behind the wagon. "And stopping murderers from getting away with their crimes is everyone's business." Bishop raised his gun again, but this time Frank stepped between them. "That's enough, boss. This has gone too far. We're not riding against the Apaches today." "Get out of my way, old man," Bishop growled. "No," Frank said simply. The standoff hung in the balance. Jack could see Bishop calculating whether he still had enough loyal men to continue. Apparently he decided he didn't, because he slowly lowered his gun. "Fine," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "We'll wait for the army. Let them handle this. But Carter, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. I will destroy you for this. I'll take your land, your cattle, everything you own. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd died today." "I'll take my chances," Jack said. He backed toward his horse, keeping his eyes on Bishop. The ranch hands parted to let him through, and several nodded respectfully as he passed. He'd won this round, but the war was far from over. Jack rode hard back to his ranch, his mind on Nahale and whether she'd reached her people in time. The sun was setting when he arrived home to find 3 Apache warriors waiting on his porch. His hand moved to his gun, but they made no hostile moves. "Nahale sent us," the tallest one said in accented but clear English. "She said you saved her life and then saved all our lives. We are here to help protect you from the white rancher who wants you dead." Jack dismounted slowly. "I appreciate the offer, but having Apache warriors at my ranch will just give Bishop more ammunition against me." "Then we will watch from the hills," the warrior said. "But we will watch." Nahale was clear in her orders. "You are under our protection now." "Orders?" Jack couldn't help but smile. "She's giving orders now?" The warrior's stern face cracked into a small grin. "Nahale gives orders to everyone. It is her way. But we listen because she is wise and sees things others miss. She says you are a good man, perhaps the only good white man in this territory. So we guard you." Jack felt humbled by this trust. "What are your names?" "I am Nayati." "These are my brothers, Kitchi and Aloe. We will remain near until the threat has passed." As the 3 warriors melted back into the desert landscape, Jack went inside his empty house. It felt lonelier than ever without Nahale's presence. He ate a cold supper and tried not to worry about what Bishop might do next. The answer came 3 days later when Pete Harrison rode up with news. The army investigated Bishop's claims. Turns out the captain wasn't as easily fooled as Bishop hoped. They found evidence the fire was started from inside the barn, not outside, and they traced those arrows to a shop in town that sold them to one of Bishop's men a week ago. Jack felt relief flood through him. "So there won't be an attack on the camps?" "No attack," Pete confirmed. "But Bishop's in trouble. The army's charging him with filing false reports and attempting to incite violence against peaceful natives. Judge Morrison is talking about bringing charges for conspiracy to commit murder. Bishop's going to face trial." "Good," Jack said. "Maybe justice actually works sometimes." "There's more," Pete said. "Bishop's hands are abandoning the ranch. Without them, he can't operate. He's going to have to sell. The bank's already calling in his loans." Pete paused. "There's talk that you might buy the Double B. Combine it with your land, you'd have one of the biggest spreads in the territory." Jack shook his head. "I don't want Bishop's ranch. Let someone else buy it." "Why not?" "You could afford it with the water rights you have." "Because I'd rather have something else," Jack said, looking north toward the hills where Nahale had disappeared. Pete followed his gaze and nodded slowly. "She hasn't come back yet?" "Not yet," Jack admitted. "But she will." Pete climbed back on his horse. Jack, whatever happens, you did a good thing. You saved a lot of lives, both white and Apache. That takes courage. After Pete left, Jack went about his daily work, but his eyes kept straying to the northern horizon. Days passed. A week. Jack began to wonder if Nahale had decided to stay with her people to leave behind the complications that came with being connected to a white rancher. Then, one evening, as the sun painted the desert gold and crimson, he saw a rider approaching. His heart recognized her before his eyes did. Nahale rode into his yard on the gray mare, and she looked magnificent despite the dust of hard travel. She dismounted and stood before him, her dark eyes searching his face. "I told you I would return," she said. "I know," Jack replied. "I was just starting to wonder when. My people needed me to help them relocate to safer territory. It took time. But I am here now." She stepped closer. "The question is, do you still want me here?" Jack didn't need to think about his answer. "Yes, stay as long as you want. Forever, if that suits you." Nahale smiled, radiant and fierce. "Forever is a long time, Jack Carter. I'm counting on it," he said. She closed the distance between them and kissed him again. And this time, there was no urgency, no fear of death or separation. Just the simple truth of two people who'd found each other against all odds in a harsh and unforgiving land. When they finally pulled apart, Nahale rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "You are mine," she whispered. "And you are mine," Jack agreed. They stood together as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, two souls bound by fate and choice, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The lonely rancher wasn't lonely anymore, and the Apache woman had found a home worth fighting for. In a territory torn by violence and prejudice, they'd created something rare and precious, a bond that transcended culture and fear. Inside the house, Jack lit the lamps while Nahale began preparing dinner. The domestic simplicity of it made him smile. A month ago, he'd been alone, resigned to a life of solitude. Now his house felt alive with possibility. They ate together, talking about practical matters like expanding the garden and training horses. But beneath the ordinary conversation ran a current of deep contentment. "What will people say?" Jack asked eventually. "About us?" "They will say many things," Nahale replied. "Some good, most bad. Does it matter to you?" "Not really," Jack admitted. "I've never cared much what people think. Then we will ignore them and build our life as we see fit." Nahale reached across the table and took his hand. "But Jack, you must understand what you are accepting. My people and your people are not at peace. There will be suspicion from both sides. White settlers will see you as a traitor. Some Apaches will see me as betraying my heritage. We will stand in the middle, belonging fully to neither world. We'll make our own world," Jack said. "Right here on this ranch. Together." Nahale squeezed his hand. Yes. Together. This is what I wanted you to understand when I said you are mine. Among my people, when lives are bound together by blood and choice, it creates something sacred. A partnership that transcends the individual. We are no longer just Jack and Nahale. We are something new, something stronger. Jack thought about this. I like the sound of that. They spent the evening planning their future. Nahale wanted to plant corn and beans using her people's methods. Jack wanted to expand his herd and build better fences. Simple dreams, but meaningful ones. As the night deepened, they moved to the porch and sat together watching the stars wheel overhead. "Tell me about your family," Jack said. "Your people in the camps." Nahale was quiet for a moment. "My mother died when I was young. My father was a warrior who fell fighting soldiers 10 years ago. I was raised by my grandmother, who taught me the old ways. She died last winter, leaving me alone. That is why I was gathering herbs by myself when Bishop's men found me. Normally I would travel with others, but I have no close family left." "I'm sorry," Jack said. Understanding her loneliness now, it mirrored his own. "Do not be sorry. The spirits brought me to you for a reason. I believe we were meant to find each other, to create family where there was none." She leaned against him. "Tell me about your parents." Jack talked late into the night, sharing memories he'd kept locked away for years. His father's patient teaching, his mother's gentle humor, the fever that had taken them both within days of each other. Nahale listened without interruption, her presence a comfort he hadn't known he needed. When he finally fell silent, she said, "They would be proud of you. Of the man you became, of the choices you made." "I hope so," Jack said. "I tried to honor what they taught me." "You did," Nahale assured him, "and now we will honor them by building something good here."
a place where people of different worlds can find common ground. Over the following weeks, they worked side by side, transforming the ranch. Nahele's people occasionally visited, bringing seeds and trade goods. Some of the neighboring white ranchers stopped by too, curious about the Apache woman living openly with Jack Carter. Most were respectful, if uncertain. A few were hostile. Jack met hostility with calm firmness, making it clear that anyone who disrespected Nahele would have to answer to him. Pete Harrison became a regular visitor, bringing news from town and occasionally staying for dinner. He and Nahele developed an unlikely friendship, trading stories about ranching and hunting. Through Pete, word spread that Jack Carter's ranch was a place where different peoples could meet peacefully. Slowly, others began to follow his example. Bishop's trial happened in late summer. Jack testified about the staged attack and the threats Bishop had made. The evidence was overwhelming, and Bishop was sentenced to 5 years in prison. His ranch was sold to pay his debts, bought by a consortium of smaller ranchers who divided the land fairly. Jack was offered the chance to buy Bishop's water rights but declined, saying water should be shared, not hoarded. This decision earned him respect from unexpected quarters. The army captain who had investigated Bishop's false claims visited personally to thank Jack for preventing the massacre. "You showed more wisdom than most men twice your age," the captain said. "This territory needs more people like you." As autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures and the promise of rain, Jack and Nahele stood on their porch watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. The ranch thrived around them, cattle growing fat on good grass, crops ripening in the garden. But more than the material success, what Jack valued was the sense of peace he felt. The loneliness that had haunted him for 5 years had been replaced by deep connection. "Are you happy?" Nahele asked, as if reading his thoughts. "More than I ever thought I could be," Jack replied honestly. "Good," she smiled. "Because I have news that will either increase your happiness or terrify you." Jack turned to look at her, suddenly nervous. "What news?" Nahele placed his hand on her stomach. "We are going to have a child. By spring, our family will grow." Jack felt his heart swell with emotions he couldn't name. Joy, fear, wonder, all mixed together. "A baby? Are you sure?" "I am sure," Nahele said. "Does this please you?" Jack pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully. "It pleases me more than I can say. A child. Our child. Half Apache, half white," Nahele said, "belonging to both worlds and neither. It will not be easy for our child, Jack. They will face challenges neither of us can fully understand. Then we'll help them face those challenges," Jack said firmly. "We'll teach them to be strong and proud and kind. We'll give them all the love we have." "Yes," Nahele agreed. "We will. And perhaps through our child and others like them, our peoples will learn that the things that unite us are stronger than the things that divide us." As the first raindrops began to fall, they went inside, already imagining the future. Jack thought about the baby who would be born in spring, about teaching a child to ride and work the land, about Nahele teaching their child the stories and wisdom of her people. It would be complicated, certainly. The world wasn't ready for such bridges between cultures. But Jack and Nahele would build that bridge anyway, one day at a time, one choice at a time. That night, as rain drummed on the roof and thunder rolled across the valley, Jack lay awake thinking about the strange path his life had taken. A pack of wolves, a woman's scream, and a split-second decision to help had changed everything. He'd gone from lonely rancher to protector to partner to father-to-be, all in the span of a few months. The future was uncertain, potentially dangerous, but also full of promise. Beside him, Nahele slept peacefully, one hand resting on her stomach where their child grew. Jack placed his hand over hers, feeling the warmth of her skin, the steady rhythm of her breathing. "You are mine now," she had said that first night. At the time, he hadn't understood, but now he did. It wasn't about possession nor control. It was about belonging, about choosing to intertwine your life with another's so completely that you became stronger together than you ever were apart. "Thank you," Jack whispered to the darkness, to the spirits Nahele believed in, to whatever force had brought them together. "Thank you for sending her to me." The rain continued through the night, soaking into the thirsty earth, bringing life to the desert. And in a small ranch house in a contested territory, two people who had been alone found everything they needed in each other. The lonely rancher and the Apache woman, bound by wolves and blood and love, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. Years later, people would talk about Jack Carter's ranch as a place where miracles happened.
where old enemies became friends, where different cultures found common ground, where a child played who embodied the hope of a better future. But in that moment, on that rainy night, it was simply home. And that was miracle enough.